You're nobody till somebody loves you. You're nobody till somebody cares. You are nobody.
I would like to introduce you tonight, and I hope your mic works, Colleen. Colleen Sharp Murray.
You make me feel so young. You make me feel so spring is sprung. And every time I see you grin, I'm such a happy individual. The moment that we speak, I wanna go play hide and seek. I wanna go and grab the moon, just like a toy balloon. You and I, we are just like a couple of tots running across Anderson, picking up lots of forget-me-nots. You make me feel so young. You make me feel there are songs to be sung, bells to be rung, and a wonderful fling to be flung. And even when I'm old and gray, that could be now, I want to feel the way I do today, 'cause you make me feel so young. Now this is where I dance, and usually I get letters of the law. When I'm old and gray, I'm gonna feel the way I do today, 'cause you make me feel so young. You make me feel so young. I think I'm up to 30 by this time. You make me feel so young. That's the end. Now you remember this. You are nobody till somebody loves you. Oh, baby. You are nobody till somebody cares. You could be king, you could possess the world and all of its gold, but gold won't bring you happiness when you're growing old. The world is still the same. Well, maybe we can change it, I don't know. As sure as the stars shine above, because you are nobody till somebody loves you. So find yourself somebody to love. Now it's time to sing along. Here we go. You're nobody till somebody loves you. You're nobody till somebody cares. You are nobody till somebody cares. You may be king and you could possess. You may be king, you could possess the world and its gold, the world and its gold. But gold won't bring you happiness when you're growing old. The world is still the same. You'll never change it, but we could try. As sure as the stars shine above, you are nobody till somebody loves you. So find yourself somebody to love. Just find somebody to love you. That means you. How wonderful to see all of you. Just wonderful to see you. Now, I have moved the table, but could somebody move the podium to me? I can't. My cord will not reach, so if there's anybody who could slide that.
It's on wheels. You're
Oh,
lucky.
it's on the wheels? You know what? perfect. You know, when we talked about doing this program, I came over and Connie, my dear Connie, came with me, and we were supposed to do it over here, so we'd have a little bit more room. And I wanted so badly to slide down that thing. What do you think? If you were producing this show, it would, yes. I thought that would be so much fun to do that. And you know, where's John? John Keyswitter? Where are you? There he is, way back in the back. You know who John Keyswitter is? You read him in the paper, don't you? He's the entertainment guy. Well, thank you, John, for coming. He lives all the way in Fairfield. He thinks I'm not nothing to say that interests him. Well, it's so good to. Oh, thank you.
That's our
they're
report.
trying. Yes, that's right. Thank you so much. Anderson Township Historical Society. I saw ATSHS, and I thought it was high school, but it's the Historical Society. Well, anyway, hasn't this been a great time to live? I mean, in our lifetime, because I'm looking out here, you are my demographic. Now, some of you are a little bit younger, but you are my demographic. And I look out and I see, you know, I mean, the early time of television, Merg, my goodness. Merg, he needs to come and speak for you. Dick Murgatroyd right here, he needs to come. Yeah, and Bill, have you spoken for this group? Not yet. You have spoken for this group? Well, next time let them have you slide down the banister, all right? Could be or something, yes, could be the end of your career. Anyway, where was I? You know, I have notes here, and because I haven't spoken for a long time, and I've been off television for 30 years and 30 pounds, and it has been a wonderful time to live, though. I can't imagine all the things that are going to happen in the next 74 years that I'm going to live, but it's going to be sensational, whatever it is. And television and the internet. How many of you have internet and Facebook and all those things? Oh my man, look at that. Boy, am I behind. Now my husband does all of those things, and our children, Shannon, my beautiful Shannon, they do all of those things, and I'm not very adept at that. So I just raise up the window like Molly Goldberg and just yell. Well, anyway, I want to tell you that one of the inventions, how many of you have a favorite invention? Would you gals never give up your dishwasher? Isn't that wonderful? Your what, microwave? Microwave? Okay, who else has a favorite? Your washer and dryer? Wouldn't that, you couldn't give that up, could you? Ladies, how about pantyhose? Well, yes. Well, bless Oprah Winfrey, because she introduced us to Spanx. Now, you guys have no idea what we're talking about. They are industrial strength pantyhose. Yes. They go where no man has gone before. They just go on and on and on, and they hold you in and all of that. But you do not dare get a hole in them. Now, you ladies know what happens when you get a hole in pantyhose. Your entire body tries to get out there. It's amazing. It really does. It tries to get through that hole. So I'm happy for industrial strength pantyhose. And I want to tell you that our children, our wonderful children, Shannon and Patrick, our son is in Dayton, Ohio. Well, he's actually in Vandalia, Ohio, and has a big church up there, and he's doing wonderful. We have, and Shannon, of course, lives here in this area, and of course the Whitakers have been in Anderson Township forever and ever and ever. Well, you're not that old, huh? Are you? No. But anyway, we have a wonderful family. We have 6 grandchildren. Our son has 3 grandsons, and then we are great-grandparents to a brand new little baby Murray boy, and he's only 2 months old. And then Shannon has 3 beautiful daughters and we have 2 great-granddaughters by her oldest daughter, Heather, who works at Anderson Mercy, And her husband works up here on Beachmont. He's a firefighter EMT. So we're all surrounded in this area, and we love it. We lived in Anderson Township, how long, honey? Maybe 10 years, I guess, total, probably, when we were first starting the church. But I'm rambling. I have to go on. Anyway, I want to give you a little background on our family. I think that's what I'm here to talk about, and how I ended up at WLW. Our family, my sister and I were 6 and 7 years old, we started with a group called Jack's Xylophone Band. Isn't that exciting? It was all xylophones. It was a variety show. And for some reason, my dad was a wonderful singer, and my mom was a funny person. Somehow I got her personality and all of her chins. And and my dad was a really good singer. So when we were little kids, my dad taught my sister and me to sing harmony. And little kids, little children are not supposed to be able to sing harmony, but we did. So we got a job with Jack's Xylophone Band, where we stayed for 12 years. After that, we became a part of another group called the Musical Notes out of Oxford, Ohio, and we were a little bit more professional, if you want to call it that. And when I was 14 and 15 years old, we were doing shows at the Netherland Plaza for conventions and those kind of things, and we were still playing xylophones. And of course, I always kept my tap shoes by the door. And so we were doing shows downtown here. And during that time, I met a man by the name of Vic Tooker, which is a funny name anyway. And he used to be on the Delta Queen. He and his folks were on the Delta Queen. But before that, he was in Dayton, Ohio, and he was playing on a morning show called the AM Show. He was a drummer. In fact, he played 11 instruments. But he was the drummer on the AM Show at WLWD, which is now WDTN. So at the time that he was on that show, we had moved back from California. Mike and I were married in California. And we were 19. And by the time we were 22, we had 2 babies. Now, Shannon was our first, and she was born 9 months and 15 minutes later after we married. Yes. And then Patrick came along a couple years after that. This man's still laughing. It doesn't get any better, honey. Laugh now. But I started there with a man called Dick Curtis, who was a wonderful guy. He taught me the business. I was green as grass. But Vic Tooker invited me to come there and audition, because he said, the gal who is now the singer on this show is going to have a baby, and I know that Tuesday and Thursday is going to be open. So Mike was at Ball State. We were married and had our children, and then he went back to school, which is not the best way to do it. But anyway, he was going to Ball State, and we were living in my little hometown of Economy. Everybody say, yay, Economy! 300 people when everyone was home. So he was going to college, and we were living there with our 2 little children. So Vic Tooker says, come on over and audition. Well, they hired me right away. I was so excited. So 2 days a week, I drove from near Richmond, Indiana to Dayton, Ohio. And you want to know how much they paid me? When I tell you that WLW means world's lowest wages, you will understand. They paid me $17.50 a day. Look at Merv. See? Am I right? But you see, it wouldn't have made any difference, because I would have paid them. I would have paid them because this is what I wanted to do. When I was 11 years old, our family got their first television. Remember when we used to wait until they flew the flag at the end of, at midnight they flew the flag, and then what did they call that came up? The test pattern came up. I mean, we watched the test pattern. We were so excited about TV. Before we got a television, our family used to drive 17 miles to Centerville to our friends who had a television to watch I Love Lucy. We did, and then we'd get in the car and go back home. Well, anyway, pardon me? Somebody call? But anyway, I did that, and then WLW, because they had so much wisdom, Ruth Lyons was making so much money in television. She was making bukus of dollars, so they said, well, why don't we just duplicate this every place? So that's why we had, was it Spook Beckman? Is that his name, in Columbus? Spook Beckman, and then we had this AM show in Dayton. Then in Cincinnati was Paul Dixon. And then who was in Indianapolis? Who? Don Melvoin. I didn't know him. He was there, okay. So anyway, they did all these morning shows to, for money, obviously. And they had to pay me $17.50, so they had to sell some time, didn't they, huh? But because Paul Dixon was only on locally in Cincinnati for an hour, they were going to go an extra half hour and go into the network then and begin to spread out so they could charge even more money like they were getting with Ruth Lyons. So that's how that all came to be. Well, here came Paul Dixon and Marion Spellman, and they came to Dayton, and I happened to be on that show. And Paul Dixon said, little girl, you need to be in Cincinnati. So since he was really chummy with our president, Mr. John Murphy, we ended up in Cincinnati. Now, my husband had a wonderful job at Frigidaire. Anybody remember Frigidaire? Yeah. He had a great job and was going to school at the same time, was trying to go to school too. But we moved to Cincinnati, and then of course, when you came to Cincinnati and you were the A girl singer, then they just simply gave you a sheet a week ahead of time and said, okay, Monday you will do the Good Morning Show. Who remembers the Good Morning Show at McAlpin's? Remember the Good Morning Show? We weren't very good, but they did serve coffee and free Danish. Anybody ever go to the Good Morning Show? Anyone? No? Well, they did that, and Bob Braun did it, and then Nick Clooney did the Good Morning Show. So I did radio, and then I did Ruth's show, and I was there just a short time before Ruth retired, so I didn't get to really work with her very long. Then Paul Dixon's show, and the Midwestern Hayride. And they scheduled me on the Midwestern Hayride, and I went into Dick Thrall, and I said, I think there is a mistake here. I think I'm thinking that you're thinking that I'm a country singer. And I said, I'm not a country singer. I probably don't really belong on the Midwestern Hayride. He said, you're not a country singer? And I said, no. He said, well, you are now. So on Saturdays live, you went in early, and all day long we rehearsed and did the Midwestern Hayride live on Saturday night. So that was fun to do all those things. Now, when I was 11 years old and we got this television, my mother was already hooked on Ruth Lyons over the radio. So when we got a television, of course, she started watching Ruth Lyons. And I thought, now when I grow up, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be like Bonnie Lou, and I'm going to be like Marion, and I'm going to be like Ruby Wright. And when I was 26 years old, that's what I did. I went to Cincinnati, and I got to be with Ruth Lyons, and I tell you, my knees were knocking. I have no idea how I was able to sing, but she was so lovely to me. I mean, she just, I was the new kid on the block. She had plenty of girl singers. And so here I came, but she was lovely to me. And then Paul Dixon in the morning was so crazy, and Bob Braun was great to me. All these people were wonderful. Do you know I worked there for a total of, almost 15 years, never had a crossword with one person, never in all that time. As we would say, I was living the dream. And it was great because I could have my darling family and, work short hours. I didn't have to be there except for rehearsals and to do the show. So that part of it was really just tremendous. And my husband was so gracious to me, well, most of the time. You want to get up and say your part? One funny story, when I have some pictures up here, by the way, and some of the books. And there is a picture on this end that I treasure because it's the only one that I have where all of us, near the end, we did a remote show. Remember when we used to go and do remote shows out of town? This was in Indianapolis at Clues Hall, and it's the only picture I have where all of us were together, including Peter Grant and Bob, Miss Lyons, and all of we girls. And so because I was low on the totem pole, I was the one that had to go out and do the promotions. You know what that is? That means you have to get up early. So they said, you'll have to get up early, and there's a guy on the radio here who is so good, and he would like you to come and do his radio program. It was dark when I got up, and they shoved me in somebody's car, and I said, well, maybe you should at least turn on the radio so I'll know who I'm going to be, talking to. So they turned on the radio, and this guy was hysterical. I mean, he was so funny. And this is like drive time, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. It was drive time. So I got there, and I met this guy. He had hair down to here, and a gal doing the weather. That was it. That's all there was to it. I thought, boy, this is great. So we got back, we did the show and so forth, and not until about at least 10 or 12 years later, we had a gentleman on our show who was a comedian. He was the opening act for Frank Sinatra and different people. Frankly, I can't remember his name. Maybe you guys can remember him. Anyway, he said, after the show, he said, come in here. Somebody wants to talk to you. And I said, oh, really? He said, yes, David Letterman wants to talk to you. I said, David Letterman? I don't know David Letterman. I said, the David Letterman? Yes, I said, David Letterman. Up there, yeah. He said, well, he knows you. And I said, how on earth does he know me? He said, because you came and did his radio show in Indianapolis. And I thought, bingo, big space in his teeth. Now I remember. He had all this hair, hair down to his shoulders. He was hippie all the way. But I did remember that big space in his teeth. Well, that's something you can tell your grandchildren. And then, of course, I ended up on Paul Dixon's show. When we started doing so many commercials, the station decided that Bonnie Lou and I should do Paul's show, and Marion and Ruby, yes, thank you. Marion and Ruby should do Bob's show because there were so many commercials. And so Paul really taught me how to do commercials. And today we put on the mute button. We didn't have it back then, did we? You couldn't mute us out. But they split the four girls up, and so I started doing a lot of commercials. So when Paul passed away, Bob Braun called me and he said, "Are you ready to stop working?" And I was only 40 years old at that time, and I said, "No, I really am not." Now I remind you that Bob Braun had a couch full of people, didn't he, Murphy? I mean, he had more singers than he had commercials. He had girl singers, boy singers, all kinds of, and they were all wonderful. And I thought, he will never bring me back on television because he doesn't need another singer. But he did. You know why? Because I could do commercials. So I helped Bob do commercials, 18 in an hour and a half. Can you imagine? But he made it pretty easy, didn't he? And then he'd pass something on. When he needed to take a break, he'd just hand something to me and say, go, and that's what we did. So we did lots and lots of commercials. But there was never another day of the Paul Dixon show after he passed. And I thought maybe, hold on just a moment. I thought maybe I would bring this. So, just so you could enjoy the evening. How many of you remember the chicken wedding? Well, as he used to say, there's a sale on these at Kroger's this week, and he'd throw it over his shoulder. That was probably the dumbest thing I ever did on television, But I think even to this day, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, you and Mary Ann will know, I think it is still the #1 rated daytime show of anything that was ever seen at WLW. Now, somebody told me that. I can't swear to that, but that's what I'm told. People took vacation days. Kids played hooky from school to see that because somebody brought in a chicken. Well, he had the chicken, remember that? And he'd throw it over his shoulder. And then a lady came in and she said, you know, you need to put some clothes on that chicken. And she brought a little outfit for the chicken. And eventually, of course, then they had to have a mate for her. And so they had Harry. He had a little goatee, remember that? So they started bringing clothes. She had a bikini. She had a little bit of everything. We never knew what those wonderful women, weren't they creative? These women, we couldn't wait to see what kind of clothes were coming in for the chicken. But this thing, this thing just grew and grew and grew, and eventually they had to do something. So, of course, at rating time, they decided to do this crazy chicken wedding. Well, that was the end of that. I don't have any salamis to give away tonight, and I have no knee ticklers for any of you. Not a one. But I had a great time at my life in television. I remember going to work, and I had these two precious kids at home. And it was great that I didn't have to work full time because I wanted to be with my family. But I remember driving home thinking, this was so much fun, I wish I were turning around going back. We'd have a good show, you know, we'd have fun. And dear Paul Dixon, you know, Paul was really, he wasn't shy for sure, but he was insecure. He was insecure. You would never believe that, would you? So we had, what was that little ladies that used to mop and clean up after the show? What? No. That was the big show. That was the big show. No, this is our show. I think her name was Eva. Eva was her name. She would come after the show and she would clean up, you know, where people left everything. And so Paul would come off the platform, and at the end of the show, we're drawing for prizes. How many of you ever got a prize from down there? Anybody? Oh, yeah, Rella. I'm sure Rella has. Did you two back there? We would be drawing for all of the prizes, and Paul would go backstage, and I saw him do this with my own eyes. And he would go backstage, and here she would be. Eva would be cleaning and mopping, and she's been all over the building that morning. She hasn't seen one thing that we've done on the show. She's cleaning, and he'd come back and he'd say, we had a good one today, didn't we, honey? She'd say, oh, yes, Paul. You had a great one today. And then she'd go back to her cleaning. But he needed to be affirmed the minute he got off the program. He needed to be affirmed that we had a good show. And you would never know that in a million years, would you? Because he was so outgoing. He was a funny man. He was just plain funny. And then dear Bob Braun, who kept me employed for the next 5 years. And eventually, in 1977, my husband and I came to have a real wonderful encounter with Christ. And it changed our lives, turned us absolutely upside down. It was the most wonderful thing, and still is the most wonderful thing that obviously ever happened to me. And I'm not going to preach a sermon to you, so don't get nervous. My husband put his watch out on the podium like this, and he always said, now, you know what happens when a preacher puts his watch out on the podium. What does that mean? Absolutely nothing. Isn't that what you say, sweetheart? Yeah. He does a Facebook blog every day. If you want a little Bible teaching, you can pick him up right there on Facebook. My darling daughter she works at the Christian school here in Newtown. She also is the children's director of a relatively new church called Ambassador's Point, right down on US 32 before you get to Newtown. What is that 8-mile road that comes out there? It's a relatively new church. And a wonderful place. It really is a good place. And she's the children's director there. And she also works at the Christian school. But a lady called me one day and she said, we have a little newspaper up here in Ohio. It covers about 5 counties, including Montgomery County. And she said it's a seniors paper. It's like a little, you know, what we would call a throwaway paper. And she said, I would like you to write an article once a month, is all you have to do. and just write to seniors and talk about the show and all kinds of things, whatever. I said, well, honey, you know, we're in a different position now. We're not, I can only talk so long about WLW. And she said, I don't care what you write, just write, give me so many words, you know, every month. And I said, well, you know, I didn't even go to college. She said, well, she said, you know, for newspapers, you only have to write to a 7th grade level. What do you think, Keith Sweater? You've heard it before. You're home free, honey, I tell you. But I said, well, you know, I might be able to do that, Connie. I might be able to do that. And so I started writing, and it became a real fun thing. I did it for 5 years. And finally I said, you know, I think I'm going to turn this over to my son. They called me the religious editor. The religious editor, that's who I was. I've got to know what time it is because I'm talking too long. Anyway, I'll finish up here. We came to know the Lord in 1977. We started out our church in 1986 at David's Buffet, 125. We stopped in there one day and said, would you have a room where we could start a church? And I think the lady was doing the same thing. I think she was cleaning the floor, wasn't she? She was vacuuming, wasn't she? And she said, well, we open at noon. You'll have to be out of here by noon. She said, you think any of those folks would stay for lunch? We said, probably. So Mike said, well, what would you charge? She said, how about $25? How many churches do you know that would love to have that kind of a budget every week? But we outgrew it in a hurry, and then we went to Summit Elementary School. We had the wonderful time there, but they wouldn't let you stay but 6 months. So then we had to move again. So we went to the YMCA down here on Clough. We had the world's largest baptistry there at the Y. And then we found our way to Hopper Hill. While we were doing all of this, we circled the city and said, Lord, if you want us to start a church. I mean, we were flying by the seat of our Holy Ghost pants, let me tell you. Lord, if you want us to start a church, you're going to have to show us where. So we drove one day up past 5 Mile, and over on the left-hand side where the church, where Solid Rock Church is now, looked over and there was a sign. It wasn't a big, beautiful sign. It was just a little sign that said 11.6 acres. I said, Mike, that's a good place for start a church. He said, do you realize that that intersection, that cloverleaf intersection right up there where Frisch's and the hotel is, there's a hotel there, just sold for $1 million? I said, no, I don't know that, but I'm going to call that number. So I called that number, and the man said, oh, honey, I'm so sorry, it's just been sold. I said, well, I think we're supposed to have a church there. He said, you're supposed to do a what? He said, no, it's already been sold. This man has a lot of money, and he's going to put condominiums in there, and so you're just a little too late. And I said, well, just in case it falls through, just in case, may I give you our number? And so he took our number, and 10 days later, he called back, and he said, the deal didn't go through, and the man who purchased it said if he could make a quick $10,000, he would be willing to sell it. And I said, well, $10,000 more than what? You know, could have been $1 million and $10,000. He said, well, you know, I think he'd probably have to have $62,000 for that. That's what we bought that land for, $62,000. Now, we did purchase other surrounding parcels so that we had, you know, more acreage when we finished. But can you imagine? That's miraculous, people. That was nothing short of a miracle. And so in 1989, we moved into that wonderful church, and then we added on to it time after time after time. And God was so good. He helped us. Every time we'd add on to that church, we could pay cash for it. We didn't have to borrow any more money. Isn't that wonderful? Well, I'm preaching. I have to stop. I want to tell you that we love you very much, and I'm so honored that you would come out and say hi to me. Our church was birthed in prayer and with a heart for missions. We were a church that was a hospital for the hurting. Just people who came who were hurting with all kinds of problems, people who were disenchanted with other churches. And so we never said, where did you go to church? You know, anything like that. We just welcomed everybody, and we had people of every denomination in our church. And it was a wonderful mixture of people, because we believed that is what Jesus would want us to do. He would want us to be together. That was his whole plan. We have this little saying, we want our people, and we want to be people who love God, love people, love each other, and serve the world. That's our little motto. We're going to reach, teach, and send people out. We were a missions church. And of course, it's still going. You know, 10 years after we left, then the church changed to Solid Rock. And there was a church split. It was the hardest thing we ever went through in our lives, saddest thing we ever went through in our lives. But you know, God's so good, he'll keep right on going. He'll keep right on going. I'm going to close with one quick story. Would you stand up, please? Right here. You stand up. Yes, stand up. I have forgotten your name.
Jenny.
Jenny. This is Jenny, and she's involved with all the seniors out in Claremont County. And she called for us to do, it was July, Christmas in July, right?
Christmas in July.
Christmas in July. Cliff Lash was still living at the time. So she said, well, you and Cliff come out and do Christmas in July. So we went to the YMCA.
Yeah, it was the Claremont Senior Services
Oh.
had half of the Y, it was leased to the Claremont Senior Services.
Right, okay, so they had a big facility.
Oh, yeah.
And so Cliff and I said, well, we'll come out and do that for you. I walked in the door, and everyone was sitting there. How many of you think were there?
Oh, we had a bunch of them. They wanted to see you and Cliff.
Well, maybe several hundred.
It was full.
It was full. I walked in the door, and everyone sitting at those tables, all the women had hats on, and they had white gloves. Had white gloves. When Cliff and I walked in the door, they were all waving to us. Let's wave to the folks who are watching. Say hello to the folks listening in. Remember that? You probably know it. We want you to see. We hope you'll agree. We really look lovely on color TV. We wish you were with us and want you to know that we're having a ball at the show. So we wave you a great big hello. Oh, listen, you all know that. Oh, I'm so proud of you. Yes.
Can I just say something on behalf of the seniors? Oh, I'm retired now because I'm turning 64. But I worked for Claremont Senior Services for 16 and a half years. And I just want to say that the seniors were so behind Ruth Lyons, the memory of the show, the Christmas fund, what it all did for their own children when they had polio and all this other stuff. And I just want to say that over the 16 and a half years that I was there, every year we did a Christmas in July for the Ruth Lyons Children's Fund. Bonnie Lou, Cliff, we had Nick Clooney. Every year we had somebody special come out. We raised, in that time, $22,000 for the fund.
Wow. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? Well, dear ones, I'm not going to keep you any longer. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of this program. I hope I didn't ramble too much. And just love you dearly. And if we meet in Kroger's, why, just wave to me, okay? People used to follow me around, you know, in Kroger's to see if I was buying what I was selling. That's a true statement. Yeah, they wanted to know if we were buying, you know. Well, part of the reason that, I'm not finished, am I? Part of the reason why they switched us from doing all the shows was because part of the time you would have one soap on Paul's show and then you'd have another soap on Bob's show. Well, you couldn't, you know, I was doing a lot of commercials, so I couldn't talk out of both sides of my mouth. I had to be, you know, had to do one or the other. So they moved me to that position. But anyway, I loved it and I love you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Connie. Anybody have to, oops, I'm sorry, I turned this off. Anybody need to say anything before you go?
I do.
Yes, what, Connie?
Do you still ever do the Bird of Paradise?
Do I still ever sing the Bird of Paradise? Oh, The bird of paradise. You know, Rob Ryder and I talked about this one day. He said of all the things that he used to sing, like Dream the Impossible Dream, and Paul always wanted me to sing God Didn't Make Little Green Apples, and all those songs that we used to do. But he said, I am known for Rubber Ducky, and you are known for May the Bird of Paradise Fly Up Your Nose. Now that was a song, that was an old country song. I don't know who did it originally. I just don't know. But one day, you know, we never knew what we were going to say or do on Paul's show or Bob's show. And so Flower Fair of Hyde Park used to send in flowers to give away every day. So one day he just handed the flowers to me and he said, here, you do this commercial. And it had Bird of Paradise in it. So then I started singing, May the bird of paradise fly up your nose. May an elephant caress you with his toes. May your wife be plagued with runners in her hose. May the bird of paradise fly up your nose. $9.95 plus tax delivered from Flower Fair of Hyde Park. I can't think of a better way than that to say goodbye.
You are nobody till somebody loves you.
Oh, baby.
You are nobody till somebody cares. You could be king, you could possess the world and all of its gold.